Tonight, while you sleep, your body is either healing itself or quietly breaking down. And the difference between those two outcomes has almost nothing to do with your age, your medication, or your genetics. It has everything to do with what you do in the hours before you close your eyes. Right now, millions of seniors over 60 are going through the same nighttime routine they've followed for decades, brushing their teeth, watching a little TV, maybe taking a pill or two, getting into bed. It feels safe. It feels normal, but buried inside that routine are habits, ordinary, invisible habits that are silently interfering with your heart, your brain, your blood pressure, and your ability to wake up tomorrow feeling strong. Not next year, tonight. In this video, we're going to walk through the 6 worst nighttime habits that seniors over 60 should stop immediately, habits that most people don't even recognize as dangerous because they've done them their entire lives. And then we're going to replace them with 3 specific nighttime habits that the latest research shows can protect your heart, stabilize your blood pressure, and sharpen your mind, starting tonight. Now I want to be clear about something before we go any further. Some of what I'm about to share will surprise you. A few of these habits are things you've probably been told are perfectly fine or even healthy. And one of them, number 5 on the worst list, is something I'd estimate 9 out of 10 seniors do every single night, without realizing it is one of the leading contributors to nighttime cardiac events in adults over 65. I'm saving that one for number 5. So stay with me, because if you or someone you love is over 60, what comes next could genuinely matter. Welcome to Thrive at Any Age, the channel dedicated to giving adults over 60 the honest, research-backed health guidance that most doctors simply don't have time to explain. Everything you're about to hear is grounded in published, peer-reviewed science from leading cardiologists, neurologists, and sleep specialists across the US and UK. We dig into the research so you don't have to, and we present it in plain English you can actually use. If you haven't subscribed yet, do that now. We publish new evidence-based content every week specifically for your age group, and next week's video is one you won't want to miss. Quick note before we continue, this video is for educational purposes only. Please talk to your doctor before changing any medications or health routines. But bring what you learn here into that conversation. You deserve care built on current evidence. Now let's talk about what's really happening in your body after the sun goes down. Most people think of nighttime as the body's off switch. You close your eyes, the world goes quiet, and your body simply waits for morning. But that's not what's happening at all. While you sleep, your body is running one of its most complex and critical maintenance cycles. Your brain is flushing out toxic waste proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. Your heart is cycling through periods of deep rest and repair. Your blood pressure follows a natural rhythm, dropping significantly in the early hours, then rising again before you wake. Your hormones are either resetting for the next day or falling dangerously out of balance. Think of your body at night like a hospital running a full overnight shift. Dozens of systems working simultaneously, cleaning, repairing, restoring. But here's the critical part. That overnight shift only runs properly when the conditions are right. The right environment, the right inputs, the right sequence of events before the shift begins. And when those conditions are disrupted by what you eat, what you watch, what you take, or what you do in those final hours before sleep, the overnight shift doesn't just slow down. In some cases, it reverses. Instead of repairing your cardiovascular system, your body spends the night fighting inflammation. Instead of consolidating memory, your brain stays partially alert, scanning for threats that aren't there. Instead of dropping to its protective low, your blood pressure stays elevated through the night, quietly stressing your arteries for 6, 7, 8 hours straight. A 2019 study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society followed 2,840 adults over the age of 65 for 4 years. Researchers found that seniors with disrupted nighttime blood pressure patterns, meaning their pressure failed to drop during sleep, had a 41% higher risk of cardiovascular events compared to those whose pressure followed a healthy overnight rhythm. 41% from something happening while they slept. Most of them had no idea. And here's what makes this particularly important for your age group. After 60, your body's tolerance for nighttime disruption drops significantly. A 35-year-old can absorb a bad night and recover, but research published in the journal Neurology found that in adults over 65, even short-term disruptions to nighttime repair cycles accelerated markers of cognitive decline measurably within just a few weeks. This isn't about feeling groggy in the morning. This is about what accumulates quietly, night after night, when the conditions for repair are never quite right. I want to tell you about Margaret. She was 68 years old, a retired school librarian from Ohio. Sharp, organized, and by every visible measure, taking good care of herself. She came to us after noticing that her memory had begun slipping in small but frightening ways, forgetting names she'd known for decades, walking into rooms and losing the thought entirely. Her doctor had run standard tests. Everything came back normal. She was told it was probably just age. But when we looked carefully at her evenings, a pattern emerged immediately. Every night without exception, Margaret did 4 of the 6 things we're about to cover in this video. She had done them for years. They felt completely harmless to her because nobody had ever told her otherwise. Within 6 weeks of changing her nighttime routine, nothing else, just her evenings, Margaret told us her mornings felt different, clearer. The fog she had accepted as permanent had started to lift. That's what's at stake here, not just sleep quality, your brain, your heart, your independence. And it starts tonight. Before we get into the list, I want to hear from you directly. Go to the comments right now and type foggy if you've been waking up feeling mentally unclear, tired even after a full night's sleep, or noticing your memory isn't as sharp as it used to be. Type restless if you're waking up multiple times through the night, struggling to stay asleep, or lying awake for long stretches in the early hours. And if both of those sound like you, type both. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to understand exactly how many of you this is affecting, because what we're about to cover isn't rare. It isn't unusual. It is happening to millions of seniors right now across the US and UK. And the fact that most of them have never been told why is exactly why this channel exists. Go ahead and comment now, then stay with us, because we're about to get into the list. And number 5, as I mentioned at the start, is the one that will likely surprise you the most. The 6 worst NIGHTTIME habits. Habit number 1, sleeping with the lights on or falling asleep with the TV running. Most seniors don't think of light as a health risk. It seems harmless, comforting, even. A television humming softly in the background as you drift off. A lamp left on across the room. But researchers have now linked this common nighttime habit to one of the most alarming sets of findings in recent cardiovascular science. In October 2025, a landmark study published in JAMA Network Open analyzed nearly 89,000 adults with an average age of 62 years. Researchers tracked personal light exposure during sleep using wrist-worn sensors and then followed participants for nearly 10 years. Their findings were stark. Compared to those who slept in complete darkness, people exposed to the brightest light at night had a 56% greater risk of developing heart failure, a 47% higher risk of heart attack, a 32% higher risk of coronary artery disease, and a 28% higher risk of stroke. These associations held even after researchers accounted for diet, smoking, exercise, and blood pressure. Light at night was an independent risk factor on its own. Here is why. Your body has an internal clock, a circadian rhythm, that governs nearly every function in your cardiovascular system. Your blood pressure, your heart rate, your platelet activity, your hormone levels. That clock is set and reset by light. When light enters your sleeping environment during the hours your body expects darkness, it sends a false signal. Your circadian rhythm is disrupted. Blood pressure fails to drop as it should overnight. Your stress hormones remain elevated. And over months and years, that nightly disruption quietly damages the lining of your arteries, raises your clotting risk, and places sustained strain on your heart. Think of it like a factory that runs a critical maintenance shift every night. The moment the lights come on unexpectedly, the workers stop. The machines halt. The maintenance doesn't happen, Night after night, the repairs fall further behind. That is what light is doing to your cardiovascular system while you sleep. Dorothy was 67, a retired nurse from Tennessee, someone who understood health better than most. She came to us after her cardiologist flagged an unexplained rise in her blood pressure overnight despite her medications seeming to be working during the day. When we reviewed her evenings, one detail stood out immediately. She had fallen asleep with the television on every single night for over 11 years. It felt familiar, safe. It reminded her of her late husband. We asked her to try blackout curtains and a sleep timer on the television for 30 days. At her next checkup, her overnight blood pressure readings had dropped measurably. Her cardiologist was at a loss to explain it. We weren't. The fix is simple. Use a sleep timer on your television so it turns off automatically. Install blackout curtains or a sleep mask. Remove bright alarm clocks from your bedside or turn them face down. Your bedroom at night should be as dark as you can make it. Not dim, dark. Your heart is counting on it. But light at night is only the beginning. The next habit on this list is something that millions of seniors do in the final hour before bed, believing it's helping them. The research now suggests otherwise. Habit number 2, eating a heavy meal within 2 hours of bedtime. For many seniors, the evening meal is the main event of the day. A warm, satisfying dinner, perhaps a second helping, a piece of fruit or a small dessert afterward. It feels nurturing, generous, and entirely reasonable. But the timing of your last meal, not just what you eat, but when, is now understood to be one of the most powerful levers in your metabolic health after 60. A 2023 study published in Nature Communications followed over 103,000 adults and found that eating a last meal after 9 p.m. was associated with a significantly higher risk of cardiovascular disease, particularly cerebrovascular events. A separate 2024 study published in the journal Nutrition and Diabetes found that adults who consumed more than 45% of their daily calories after 5 p.m. had measurably higher blood glucose levels after meals, regardless of body weight, total calorie intake, or diet composition. The blood sugar problem wasn't what they ate, it was when. Here is the mechanism. After 60, your body's insulin sensitivity follows a strict daily rhythm. It is highest in the morning. Your body is primed to process carbohydrates, regulate blood sugar, and burn fuel efficiently. By the time evening arrives, that sensitivity has dropped significantly. Your pancreas is winding down. Melatonin levels are rising, and melatonin actively suppresses insulin secretion. When you eat a large meal into that window, your blood sugar spikes higher and stays elevated longer than it would have if you had eaten the same meal at noon. That means more time spent with elevated glucose circulating through your blood vessels overnight, quietly contributing to inflammation, arterial damage, and increased cardiovascular risk. And here is what makes this particularly concerning for anyone managing blood pressure, diabetes, or prediabetes. Those elevated blood sugar levels don't just affect your heart. They affect the quality of your sleep itself. Studies show that blood sugar instability overnight disrupts deep sleep stages, reduces your body's overnight repair processes, and increases the likelihood of waking at 2 or 3 a.m. Raymond was 71, a retired engineer from Leeds, England. He had managed type 2 diabetes reasonably well for 6 years, but his morning glucose readings had been creeping upward for over a year despite no changes to his medication. When we walked through his daily routine, the pattern emerged quickly. Raymond's main meal was consistently eaten between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. because that was the habit of 40 years. He had never considered it a problem. When we shifted his main meal to 6 p.m. and kept his evening light, a small handful of nuts or a cup of warm broth if he was hungry later, his morning glucose readings came down within 3 weeks. His diabetes nurse called it one of the fastest improvements she'd seen without a medication change. The food hadn't changed. The clock had. The practical fix: aim to finish your last substantial meal at least 3 hours before you go to bed. If you feel genuinely hungry late in the evening, a small protein-based snack, a boiled egg, a small amount of plain yogurt, a few walnuts, is far less disruptive to your overnight blood sugar than a heavy carbohydrate meal. You are not depriving yourself. You are working with your body's natural chemistry instead of against it. We're only 2 habits in, and already you can see the pattern. The most dangerous nighttime risks are hidden inside the most ordinary, harmless-seeming behaviors. The next one is something I want you to pay close attention to, because it affects almost every senior who watches television before bed, and the research behind it is brand new. Habit number 3, watching stimulating or distressing content before sleep. Before we get to habit number 3, go to the comments right now and type restless if you regularly find yourself lying awake after watching the news, a thriller, or an upsetting program at night. And type wired if you often feel more alert after television than before you turned it on. I want to know how many of you recognize this pattern. Now, most seniors understand that screen time before bed can interfere with sleep, but the research has gone much further than that. It is no longer just about light exposure or blue wavelengths. It is about what your brain does with what it watches. A 2022 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences analyzed data from over 145,000 adults in the UK and found that watching television for 4 or more hours per day was associated with a 28% higher risk of dementia, a 35% higher risk of depression, and a 15% higher risk of Parkinson's disease. Crucially, this effect persisted even in participants who were physically active. Exercise did not cancel out the damage from passive, stimulating television. Why? Because television, especially news, crime, or emotionally charged drama, activates your brain's stress response. Your cortisol rises, your heart rate increases, your nervous system enters a state of alert. For a younger person, that alert state dissipates within an hour of turning the screen off. But after 60, the nervous system takes longer to return to baseline. If you go to sleep with an activated stress response, your brain does not enter its deep restorative phases properly. Memory consolidation is impaired. The glymphatic system, your brain's waste-clearing process, operates at reduced capacity, and you wake up feeling tired regardless of how many hours you were in bed. Leading neurologists and sleep specialists now uniformly recommend a minimum of 60 to 90 minutes of screen-free wind-down time before sleep for adults over 60. Not because it feels nice, because the brain's transition from alert to restorative sleep requires a physiological cooling-down period that screens actively prevent. The fix is not to stop watching television. It is to stop watching it in the final hour before bed. Switch to something passive and gentle, a podcast, quiet music, light reading, a conversation. Give your nervous system the runway it needs to land safely before sleep. But as damaging as these first 3 habits are, they are not the most surprising ones on this list. Habit number 4 is something that many seniors actually believe is helping their heart. The latest research suggests they may have been misled. Habit number 4, taking melatonin every night as a long-term sleep aid. This one will surprise many of you, because melatonin has been positioned for years as the safe, natural alternative to prescription sleeping pills. It is sold in every pharmacy, recommended by friends, even suggested by some doctors. Millions of seniors take it every single night without hesitation. But in November 2025, researchers presented findings at the American Heart Association's Scientific Sessions, one of the most prestigious cardiovascular conferences in the world, that stopped the medical community in its tracks. The study reviewed 5 years of electronic health records for over 130,000 adults with chronic insomnia. Researchers compared those who had used melatonin for 1 year or longer against a matched group of insomnia sufferers who had never taken the supplement. What they found was deeply concerning. Adults who used melatonin long-term were approximately 90% more likely to develop heart failure over the 5-year study period. They were nearly 3.5 times more likely to be hospitalized for heart failure. And they were nearly twice as likely to die from any cause during the study window. These findings were independent of other cardiovascular risk factors. Now, this is important to say clearly. This study shows an association, not proven cause and effect. More research is needed, and melatonin used occasionally for jet lag, for a disrupted night, for short-term sleep difficulty remains a very different scenario from taking it every single night for years. The researchers themselves were careful to distinguish between short-term and chronic use. But here is the honest question you need to ask yourself. If you have been taking melatonin every night for 12 months or longer, believing it is harmless, were you ever actually told about this risk? Was your doctor tracking your heart health in relation to it? Was it ever presented to you as something to use only occasionally? Leading cardiologists who reviewed these findings are now calling for patients to have a conversation with their doctor before continuing long-term melatonin use. The American Heart Association has urged more research into melatonin's cardiovascular safety profile urgently. The practical step: if you are currently using melatonin nightly, do not stop abruptly without speaking to your doctor. But do bring this study to your next appointment and ask specifically about the appropriateness of long-term use in your case. You have a right to that conversation, and there are evidence-based, non-supplement approaches to sleep that leading sleep specialists now consider more effective and safer for long-term use. We are now at habit number 5. I mentioned this one at the very beginning, and it is the one that most consistently surprises people because it looks nothing like a health risk. It looks like wisdom. Habit number 5. Going to bed too early out of exhaustion rather than true sleepiness. This is the habit nobody warns you about, and it may be quietly disrupting your brain health in ways that compound over years. After 60, fatigue is real. Afternoons feel heavy. The couch becomes very persuasive by 7 p.m., and so many seniors begin moving their bedtime earlier and earlier by 8 p.m., sometimes by 7 p.m., not because they are truly sleepy, but because they are tired. The two feel identical, but physiologically, they are completely different states, and the distinction matters enormously for what your brain does overnight. A study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society followed over 3,000 adults aged 60 and older and found that those with consistently early bedtimes, particularly before 9 p.m., showed greater cognitive decline over the follow-up period, even when accounting for sleep duration and other health factors. A separate study found that going to bed significantly before your natural sleep pressure has built up causes fragmented, shallow sleep, the kind that leaves you waking at 3 a.m., lying awake for hours, and rising feeling unrested regardless of how early you retired. Here is the mechanism. Sleep pressure, the neurochemical drive to sleep, builds throughout your waking day through the accumulation of a substance called adenosine. Adenosine is your brain's natural sleep signal. The longer you are awake, the more it builds and the deeper and more restorative your sleep becomes. When you go to bed before that pressure has properly accumulated, your sleep is shallow. You cycle too quickly through sleep stages. Your deep sleep, the most restorative phase, is cut short. And your brain never gets the full overnight repair cycle it needs. The fix is counterintuitive, but well supported by sleep science. If you are consistently waking early and lying awake at night, try pushing your bedtime 30 to 45 minutes later rather than earlier. Allow the sleep pressure to build more fully. Keep a consistent wake time even if you had a difficult night. This anchors your circadian rhythm and gradually deepens your sleep quality. If afternoon fatigue is the trigger, leading sleep specialists recommend a brief 20-minute nap before 3 p.m. rather than an early bedtime. Short, timed, not a 2-hour retreat to the bedroom. Now we come to number 6, the final habit, and this one is the most overlooked of all because it involves something seniors are routinely told to take, something that lines the shelves of every pharmacy, something that feels like responsible self-care. Habit number 6, taking common over-the-counter painkillers at night without understanding their overnight effects. Ibuprofen, naproxen, diclofenac, you know these names. They are in almost every home. When arthritis flares, when a stiff back keeps you awake, when a headache arrives at 10 p.m., reaching for one of these feels obvious, sensible, even necessary. But after 60, these medications interact with your overnight physiology in ways that most seniors have never been told about. And for those who take them regularly at night, the cumulative effect on the heart and kidneys is one of the most underappreciated risks in senior health. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, work by blocking enzymes that regulate inflammation, but those same enzymes also help your kidneys manage fluid and sodium levels overnight. After 60, kidney function naturally declines, often without any visible symptoms. When NSAIDs interfere with overnight kidney function in an already sagging system, fluid retention increases, blood pressure rises. And for many seniors, that rise in overnight blood pressure is the very thing their morning medication was trying to address, creating a cycle where the painkiller at night undoes the blood pressure work done during the day. A 2021 study published in the European Heart Journal found that regular NSAID use in adults over 65 was associated with significantly elevated risk of heart failure hospitalization, particularly when the drugs were taken in the evening, when kidney function is already at its lowest point of the daily cycle. The risk increased further when NSAIDs were combined with diuretics or ACE inhibitors, combinations that are extremely common in seniors managing hypertension. Barbara was 69, a retired schoolteacher from Manchester. She took 2 ibuprofen tablets most nights to manage the knee pain that had woken her for years. Her blood pressure had been consistently elevated for over 2 years despite 3 different medication adjustments. When we reviewed the timeline, the connection became clear. Within 6 weeks of switching to a combination of a warm compress, a topical anti-inflammatory gel, and acetaminophen on the nights when pain was unavoidable, her overnight blood pressure readings normalized. Her cardiologist reduced one of her medications for the first time in 4 years. The practical advice: if you are taking ibuprofen or naproxen regularly at night, please bring this to your doctor's attention. Ask specifically whether a topical formulation applied directly to the painful joint might be equally effective with a fraction of the systemic impact. Acetaminophen, while not suitable for everyone, is significantly less disruptive to kidney function and blood pressure for most seniors when used at appropriate doses. You are not being asked to endure pain. You are being asked to treat it more intelligently. Those are the 6 worst nighttime habits, but here is the good news, because knowing what to stop is only half the story. Now let's talk about the 3 nighttime habits that leading researchers say every senior over 60 should start tonight. The 3 nighttime habits you must start tonight. Habit 2, start number 1, the 10-minute wind-down protocol. Top sleep researchers and neurologists now consistently recommend what they call a structured wind-down window, a minimum of 60 minutes before bed, where the brain is deliberately guided from alertness toward rest. For seniors over 60, even a focused 10-minute version of this protocol has been shown to meaningfully improve sleep quality. The science is clear. Your brain needs a transition period. It cannot switch directly from stimulation to restorative sleep any more than a car can go from highway speed to a full stop in 1 second. The wind-down protocol gives your nervous system that transition. Here is the evidence-backed version. In the final 60 minutes before sleep, dim the lights in your home. Your brain responds to light levels as a signal of time of day. In the final 10 minutes, perform 3 slow, deliberate actions in sequence. First, write down the single most pressing thought or worry on your mind, not to solve it, but to park it outside your head. Research shows that externalizing unresolved thoughts reduces the brain's overnight rumination significantly. Second, perform 5 slow breath cycles. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and begins the physiological transition to sleep. Third, state, either aloud or in writing, one specific thing from the day that went well. This is not optimism. It is neuroscience. Positive emotional closure before sleep is associated with deeper delta wave sleep and stronger overnight memory consolidation. This takes 10 minutes. It costs nothing. And according to leading sleep specialists, it is one of the highest impact changes an older adult can make to their overnight health. Habit 2, start number 2, making your bedroom completely dark and slightly cool. We covered the cardiovascular dangers of light at night in habit number 1. But the prescription, not just avoiding light, but actively creating darkness and optimizing bedroom temperature, is one of the most consistently supported recommendations in current sleep medicine for adults over 60. The evidence on temperature is compelling. Your core body temperature needs to drop by approximately 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate and maintain deep sleep. After 60, this thermoregulatory process becomes less efficient. Leading sleep specialists recommend a bedroom temperature between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, slightly cooler than most seniors keep their rooms. Even cooling your feet before bed by wearing light socks, which paradoxically accelerates overall body cooling by directing blood flow to the extremities, has been shown in clinical studies to reduce the time it takes to fall asleep by up to 15 minutes in older adults. Combined with complete darkness, blackout curtains, a sleep mask, all electronics removed or turned face down, these two environmental changes address two of the three most powerful physical triggers of poor sleep in seniors. The third is noise, and even a modest reduction in ambient sound through foam earplugs or a white noise machine has been shown to reduce nighttime awakenings significantly in older adults. These are not lifestyle preferences, they are evidence-based environmental interventions. Start with the darkness, start tonight. Habit 2, start number 3, a small, specific pre-sleep nutritional ritual. This final habit is perhaps the most underused and most impactful change a senior can make to their overnight brain and body health. And it comes directly from some of the most rigorous research in nutritional gerontology. After 60, your brain enters an extended overnight fast, typically 7 to 9 hours without nutritional support. As we covered earlier in this video, the brain does not simply wait patiently. It requires specific inputs to maintain its overnight repair functions, particularly the glymphatic clearing process that removes waste proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. When those inputs are absent, the brain's maintenance cycle is compromised. Leading researchers in nutritional neuroscience now recommend a very specific pre-sleep nutritional approach for adults over 60, not a heavy snack, but a targeted small ritual approximately 45 minutes before bed. This should include a small amount of tryptophan-containing protein, a tablespoon of almond butter, a few walnuts, or half a small banana, which the brain uses as a precursor to both serotonin and melatonin, supporting natural sleep onset without supplementation. Paired with a warm, non-caffeinated drink, chamomile tea, warm water with a small amount of honey, or warm oat milk, the combination signals the brain's limbic system that the day is ending safely, reduces cortisol, and begins the neurological preparation for deep sleep. A 2024 review published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that older adults who followed consistent, structured pre-sleep nutritional rituals had measurably better overnight cognitive performance, lower inflammatory markers, and significantly better scores on memory and executive function tests compared to those with no pre-sleep routine. The difference was not explained by diet quality alone. It was the ritual itself, the consistency, the signal. Margaret, the retired librarian from Ohio we mentioned earlier, this was the change that made the greatest difference for her. Not medication, not supplements. A small cup of warm chamomile tea, a few walnuts, and 5 minutes of quiet sitting. Her mornings, she told us, had not felt that clear in over 4 years. If you have made it this far into this video, you are not the kind of person who scrolls past information that matters. You are the kind of person who takes their health seriously, who wants real answers, not just reassurance, who is willing to hear something uncomfortable if it means living better. And that means you almost certainly know someone who needs to hear this too. An older parent who falls asleep with the television on every night. A spouse who reaches for ibuprofen before bed without a second thought. A friend who has been taking melatonin every single night for years believing it is completely harmless. Right now, before you forget, share this video with one person in your life who is over 60, not because we are asking for views, but because the information in this video is the kind that changes daily habits. And changed daily habits, compounded over weeks and months, change health outcomes. One share could matter more than you know. And if this video has already made you think differently about your own evenings, drop a comment below right now. Tell us which habit surprised you the most. Was it the light exposure and the heart failure risk, the melatonin findings, the early bedtime? Tell us. We read every single comment on this channel, and your responses genuinely shape the content we create next. Now let's take a breath. Because everything we've covered in this video could feel heavy. 6 habits, 6 ways your evenings may have been quietly working against you, and it would be completely understandable to feel overwhelmed right now. But here is what I want you to hold on to. Every single thing we covered today is changeable, not with a prescription, not with an expensive program, not with a dramatic overhaul of your entire life, with decisions, small, specific, tonight decisions. You do not need to fix all 6 habits at once. Research on behavioral change in older adults consistently shows that targeting one habit at a time produces more durable results than trying to change everything simultaneously. Pick the one from this list that resonated most strongly with you, the one where you thought quietly to yourself, "That's me." Start there, just there. Think back to Margaret, 68 years old, foggy mornings, a memory that had started frightening her, 4 years of gradual decline that her doctor had attributed to age, 6 weeks of evening changes, nothing else, and her mornings began to clear. That is not a miracle. That is biology responding to the right conditions. Your body wants to heal overnight. Your brain wants to repair itself. Your heart wants to follow its natural rhythm. After 60, those processes don't stop. They simply become more sensitive to the conditions you create for them, more responsive to care, more dependent on the right environment. The evening is not just the end of your day. It is the preparation for everything your body does while you sleep. And what your body does while you sleep determines how you feel, how clearly you think, how steadily your heart beats, and how independently you live, tomorrow, next month, and 10 years from now. You have more control over that than you have been told. So here is exactly what to do, starting tonight. Step 1. Darken your bedroom completely. Before you go to bed tonight, set a sleep timer on your television so it turns off automatically. If you have a bright alarm clock on your bedside table, turn it face down or move it across the room. If street light comes through your curtains, consider a sleep mask. Even a basic one makes a significant difference. This single change addresses the single most damaging nighttime cardiovascular risk we covered today. Do it tonight. Step 2. Move your last meal earlier. If you currently eat your main meal after 7 p.m., shift it 30 minutes earlier this week, then another 30 minutes the following week. You do not need to make a dramatic change overnight. A gradual shift of 60 minutes over 2 weeks is enough to meaningfully reduce your overnight blood sugar and begin restoring your natural blood pressure rhythm. If genuine hunger arrives later in the evening, a small handful of walnuts or a tablespoon of almond butter is your safest option. Step 3. Create a 10-minute wind-down. In the final 10 minutes before you get into bed tonight, put the phone down, turn the television off, dim the lights. Write down one unresolved thought to park it outside your mind. Take 5 slow breath cycles, 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 6 counts out. Name one thing from today that went well. 10 minutes, that is all. But done consistently, leading sleep specialists consider this one of the highest impact changes an older adult can make to their overnight health. Step 4. Review your nighttime medications and supplements. If you are currently taking ibuprofen, naproxen, or any other NSAID regularly at night, or if you have been taking melatonin every night for longer than 3 months, bring this video's findings to your next doctor's appointment. Ask specifically about the cardiovascular implications of long-term nighttime NSAID use. Ask about the new research on melatonin and heart failure risk. Write those questions down before you go. You deserve a conversation built on current evidence, not a prescription that was written years ago and never revisited. Step 5. Do not go to bed exhausted before your body is truly sleepy. If you have been moving your bedtime earlier and earlier, try pushing it 30 minutes later this week. Keep your wake time consistent regardless of how the night went. And if afternoon fatigue is the problem, allow yourself a single 20-minute nap before 3 p.m. rather than retreating to bed early. Anchor your rhythm. Give your sleep pressure time to build fully. One final note, and this is important, please do not stop any medication abruptly based on what you have learned today. Every change to your medication routine should be discussed with your doctor first. What this video gives you is not a reason to act alone. It is a reason to have a better informed conversation. Bring these findings, ask these questions. You are not being difficult, you are being your own best advocate. Because that is exactly what thriving at any age looks like. If you found this video genuinely useful, and I hope you did, there are 3 things I want to ask of you before you go. First, if you are not yet subscribed to Thrive at Any Age, please do that right now. We publish new evidence-based content every single week, research that is specifically designed for adults over 60, presented in plain English, and focused on the things that actually affect your daily quality of life. Not trends, not supplements trying to sell you something. Just the science, honestly explained. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Second, leave a comment below and tell us which of the 6 habits surprised you the most. Was it the light exposure and the heart failure connection, the new melatonin research, the early bedtime findings, or was it something else entirely? Tell us where you are watching from as well. We have viewers from across the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, and every comment reminds us why this channel exists. Third, and this one matters most, if someone you love is over 60 and any part of what you heard today sounds like their evenings, please share this video with them today, not next week. Today, one conversation, one shared video, one changed habit. That is genuinely how health outcomes shift. You could be the reason someone sleeps better tonight than they have in years. Until then, take care of your evenings, because your mornings depend on them.